Clearly, I consider the Trump administration a danger to the world, but I regard it as a purely temporary phenomenon that will disappear in 2020 or even sooner. I give President Trump credit for motivating his core supporters brilliantly, but for every core supporter, he has created a greater number of core opponents who are equally strongly motivated. That's why I expect a Democratic landslide in 2018.
Well, good day there, folks. This is Federico Cardella with Inspo News, and you know me, I like giving the straight news about important topics regarding defending this Constitution, our national sovereignty, our national security, supporting our great President Donald J. Trump and the Make America Great Again agenda, etc. And so we don't really like doing these kind of stories, but the occasion demands it since we've got a Supreme Court justice now in jeopardy. The left wing has totally hijacked the Me Too movement. They've hijacked every woman who's been legitimately assaulted or raped by a male perpetrator, a bully at work, some sex pest like Bill Clinton, a sex predator, other predators like Harvey Weinstein. I mean, these people are real. We have real pedophiles out there. We have pedophile priests. We have pedophiles, government officials. We've got rapists that were former presidents committing horrible acts right inside the White House when they were in the Oval Office. So we've seen our fill of this, and we know when a woman, an innocent woman or child, is innocently abused, that really is a great concern and should be a great concern to every American, and we should do all in our power to protect those kind of innocent victims and defend them. And that's how the Me Too movement originally began, but now it's been hijacked by the left wing, who is just taking anyone from any time, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and saying, someone kissed me in high school at a party or whatever, and I didn't want it, and then they tried to take off my bathrobe or whatever. I mean, folks, this is what we told you in our last report about Christine Blasey Ford. She was a useful tool, a George Soros funded missile sent to destroy the Trump administration's promise to get the American people a pro-constitutionalist, pro-life Supreme Court. That's what this is all about. Don't be surprised that George Soros is funding her legal fund. Of course he is. We told you. We've shown you in the videos here for the last year and a half. George Soros' promise to take down Make America Great Again movement, to destroy the Trumpian movement, to defeat President Trump in the midterms and then again in 2020. That's their goal. They want their left-wing globalist in power. And so Christine Blasey Ford is just another agitator who's being paid, an Alinskyite agitator. She herself is a pro-abortionist, left-wing loon, and she was a party girl. That's right, she was a party girl even back as early as the 10th grade when she was 15 years old. And we find from some of the yearbook entries, that's when they like to get the girls drunk, to teach them all about trying to conquer boys. I mean, you'll be surprised what you're going to hear in this report. And listen, as a Christian American, I don't like particularly doing these kind of semi-salacious, tabloid, yellow journalistic reports. This isn't intended to be yellow journalism. This isn't the gossip column. We're not a British tabloid. But what we are going to go over is something that's in a direct assault that George Soros and the globalists are using this woman as a missile, as a spear, as a cusp of a spear, to stick into this innocent Supreme Court justice to hopefully win the midterms and prevent the president from getting a conservative, nationalist, pro-American, pro-presidency, because, see, Mueller is going to continue to attack Trump. The globalists have him funded with our taxpayer money to the hilt. He's going to continue to attack Trump unless there's someone in the Supreme Court that can cast a decision in the event that, let's say, Bob Mueller subpoenas the president and it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. Brett Kavanaugh's a big believer in the Founding Fathers, a big believer in three separate but equal branches of government, the separation of powers doctrine. And so he'll protect the presidency. And that includes President Trump because he hasn't done anything wrong. But we see through the Special Counsel Integrity Act and all this stuff that the tyrannical Senate is trying to put together to tip the scale of power away from the presidency. A few powers to give him, the Founding Fathers, there are few powers but there are very powerful powers in the Senate. I guess they're jealous, or they're globalists, communists, these international socialists. They want to bring down this constitutional republic. They know they can do that by weakening any one branch of our government because there's a delicate balance there. Now, we here at inspo News support the balance the Founding Fathers proffered, and we will continue to fight for good constitutional government and inform and alert the American people. Now, we here at inspo News support the balance the Founding Fathers proffered, and we will continue to fight for good constitutional government and inform and alert the American people. Now listen to George Soros here. He's got powers to be that he was going to bring to bear for the midterms. He predicted a Trump defeat. Let's prove him wrong, folks, at the polls, okay? Let's shut these Luciferian globalists down. Wasn't Margaret Blasey Ford another useful idiot, highly paid one, I might add, because she's going for a book deal. She's going to become a household name in a bad way, kind of like on the same treasonous line as Omarosa Manigault. But folks, let me tell you, there's a disturbing aspect to this woman's past that we're going to go over in this report. This is going to be the hardest hitting report in any channel, on any news report you're going to hear on who this woman is. And we're going to do it tastefully, and we're going to do it honestly, and we're going to do it try to do it with class, based on the macabre and dark subject matter, somewhat salacious. That will be a very hard task to tango with. We're going to try to dart in and out of it tastefully. But now, let's get into the report. Now, to understand Christine Blasey Ford, you've got to understand what she just did. Okay, listen to this. This evil woman, and I'm going to tell you, she's wicked to the core. She's an abortionist. Her and her husband have had all kinds of marital problems. They're not faithful to each other. The whole thing is being dramatized. She's a Sarah Bernhardt. She's a liar. She's trying to malign this good man. Think about what his kids are going through and his wife. This is an innocent family. There's a godly family. They're faithfully married. They believe in pro-life. They're Christians. And so Soros and the globalists, with this Christine Blasey Ford as their battering ram, are trying to malign his good name. They don't care if it's not true. Lying is useful to these socialist, communist globalists, these Bolsheviks that have moved from Moscow in 1918 all the way to Washington, D.C. and Silicon Valley. But Christine Blasey, she scrubs her internet history to eliminate evidence of hazy, drunken sex parties documented in her high school yearbook. These women bragged about it, for goodness sakes, including her. Why, she's no lily white virginal testimony of any kind of purist woman. She's not some innocent Puritan lady having to wear a scarlet letter for a crime, for an adultery she didn't commit, that was perpetrated upon her by someone like a great man like Justice Kavanaugh. No, this is fantasy. Christine Blasey Ford, whose middle name is Margaret, is known also as Blasey CM on her science papers that she's published with the abortionist company called Corcept Therapeutics. Baby killers. You gotta watch these baby killers. You can't trust them. I know some of you out here are Tommy Lauren fans, but I'm telling you, beware of anybody that wants late-term abortions, doesn't want to protect the right to life. There's something fundamentally wrong with those people, because if they're willing to just en masse kill unborn children up to 9 months, well, what do they think they'll do to you or I one day if they think we're just a bunch of protoplasm, have no fear of God, don't believe that God gave life in the womb, it's all just a mechanical process? Why, they can euthanize the elderly, and then they can start picking out classes of groups, like American constitutionalists. Or even Christians, for that matter. No, Chrissy Blasey Ford, known as Margaret Blasey CM, publishes her pro-abortion papers with Corcept Therapeutics. Of course she's a materialist. This woman has no conscience. No one with any conscience could do this against a fine man like Judge Kavanaugh and his precious wife and kids. Think about what they're having to hear in school, or out on the air, up there in the internet, or on their smartphones, listening to all this scuttlebutt about their fine, sterling father and husband. Give me a break. Already this woman should be counter-investigated and prosecuted, and that's what we're going to do in this report tonight. We're going to air all her dirty laundry for a change. Let her get her taste of her own medicine. Why, she's no innocent virgin, some unbroken flower that was raised by Puritan pastor and his wife. Why, for goodness sakes, her parents were lascivious. They promoted the promiscuity and the drinking. She was raised from her childhood by a bunch of godless, secular, materialist parents, phony Christians who go out with no morality, but immorality. That's their morality. But even before she went public with her basic accusations against Brett Kavanaugh, Christine Blasey scrubbed, wiped out, extinguished her entire internet history. This kind of reminds me of Hillary Clinton. Wonder if she used the same bleach spit to destroy her smartphones and computers. Oh, but she could only control so much online. Why, the cat was out of the bag. Many of her classmates had yearbooks, and they have since taken snapshots of those and are beginning to post them online, and it doesn't paint a pretty picture of this supposed poor little 15-year-old girl that was abused by a 17-year-old boy, supposedly, allegedly. We don't even know what happened. We don't think it happened. We don't think she has the right guy. We think her entire memory's clouded because she was so drunk that night, because that's how they haze these girls at this private academy known as the infamous Holton Arms School of Sleazy Girls. And I can't speak for the prep school today. I know they're liberal. They've got to be leftist, being around the Washington or Bethesda and Maryland area. But the fact is, back then, they were pretty licentious. I mean, it was a female version of John Belushi's Animal House. Well, goodness gracious, the theme song of this entire prep school is John Belushi's Blues Brothers. Why, some of these phony ex-classmates of hers trying to appear as angels of virginal purity, in fact, we're filthy, dirty little girls and sluts bragging about their sexual exploits and saying how, well, junior and senior girls do much better with the sophomore and freshman boys since they're so easy to manipulate, being so innocent regarding relationships. I wonder what those relationships were. Now, we know all about your dirty little secrets, and I'm sure George Soros didn't anticipate this kind of backlash of truth. But I'll tell you here, we're brutal with the truth. We don't mess around with it here at Inspo News. We tell you just like it is, because we don't like tyranny and falsehoods coming from anybody, including this fake, nauseating, self-righteous liar, Margaret Blasey Ford. Well, anyway, she scrubbed her whole internet history, removing her link pages and even managing to have her entire high school yearbook completely removed from off the internet. Now, that was done in conjugation with some of these other women who have come out in her support from the school. Probably none of them were at that party. None of them really knew what was going on. And if they dare come into that Senate and lie under oath, I hope they all go to jail en masse collectively for lying. I mean, that Holton Arms yearbook is loaded with accounts of wild, drunken sex parties gleefully attended by Blasey and others. Here is the school's motto at the time amongst these silly girls who seem to be in one long initiation or hazing party the whole time they attended there. Listen to this quote. It'll blow your mind. Yes, this is the Holton Arms girls. This was their little saying, quote, "And there are always parties to celebrate any occasion. Although these parties are no doubt unforgettable, they are only a memory lapse for most, since loss of consciousness is often an integral part of our party scene." End of quote. They're bragging that the fact they got so drunk they'd pass out and couldn't remember the party, that's what made it a good party. And if you could conquer a freshman or a sophomore innocent virginal boy, why, they were the predators in many cases here. We're not saying all the girls there were, but some of these girls were sexual predators themselves. And of course, little innocent Margaret Blasey girl, well, she was running with the wrong crowd, it seems, and with her parents' support. No, they wanted her to sow her wild oats. This little wild girl who tries to project her sins upon this innocent man, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, and try to destroy his sweet family that is stable, that has fidelity, that has righteousness. Why, isn't this what all these left-wing Sororites, Hillaryites, Alinskyyites, they all do this? They blame their targets, their enemies, their political adversaries, their opposite ideologues. They blame them on what they do themselves. by the greatest apostle of all, with St. Paul, who wrote over 2/3 of the New Testament, and he was a finger pointer at one point in his life. He was under condemnation, he said. He was guilty for the things he did. And so he'd point the finger at the innocent. He was bin Laden before bin Laden. He massacred Christians. He tormented them. He was a religious zealot, and he was a self-righteous one. But he pointed the finger at innocent people. And this was his saying: he that judges, he that pointeth the finger, doeth the same. So the same thing she did, her guilty little conscience for her decrepit and depraved, salacious upbringing, a party girl, a woman who liked to binge drink, didn't know what was going on. That's what her and her girlfriends did. They bragged about it, wrote about it in the yearbook. That's why she's so busy purging all this. I mean, you're talking about an aggressive female, a hypocrite. It's no better than Hillary Clinton pointing the finger at Justice Kavanaugh, who, by the way, hasn't proven to do anything, when her husband forcefully and against the will of adult women raped Broderick and Paula Jones. And I won't go into the details. Who wants to know about Bill Clinton's sordid past in great detail? We don't. But the fact is, these women were really abused and raped. And guess what? Not one of these feminazis, leftist, Soros people on the globalist left came out in support of them. No, this is all about a political agenda to destroy the integrity of our Constitution, our sovereign rights as a nation, and to bring America down so they can get their transnationalist New World Order. That's what this Christine Blasey Ford's all about. Don't you forget it when you hear her lies and testifying if she shows up next week at the hearings. And apparently it's supposed to happen Wednesday or Thursday now. The goalposts have been moved so many times. Obviously, the left wing's making a fool out of the Senate here. You can get any woman from 40 years ago coming out of the blue saying, you know what, this guy kissed me and tried to take off my blouse when I was a sophomore in high school. Oh, for goodness sakes, he was a kid, she was a kid. What's the difference between 15 and 17? But he didn't even do that. She's got the wrong guy. This is a mistaken identity because she's so drunk. And of course, we have the testimony of the other men that were there with her, who said that he did nothing of the sort that night. He never acted like that at any party, and they were with him the whole time. There was already 2 gentlemen have come out. But one of the enduring mysteries of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's decision to level a last-minute allegation of sexual misconduct against Judge Brett Kavanaugh is why her social media and online presence were so thoroughly scrubbed prior to her making these specious charges against Judge Kavanaugh and making it public. Now, us internet sleuths have tracked down a few photos and articles from Dr. Blasey Ford's professional output. She effectively ghosted herself prior to going public, a very unusual move for someone who requested and anticipated anonymity from the Democrats from whom she had leveled these charges against this innocent Judge Kavanaugh. Now, after the ghosting and masking of Christine Blasey Ford was so thorough that her high school alma mater, the so-called prestigious all-girl Holton Arms School, even pulled the yearbooks for the years during which she was a student. When a teenage Brett Kavanaugh allegedly attacked her, now, I guarantee you, all the people at that school that are running that school, I would project, and I'd put money on this, I'd wager on this, that 99% of those people voted for Hillary Clinton. Okay? These prep schools in Bethesda, Maryland, well, Maryland itself is a very SES, European Union type, socialist, transnationalist blue state, okay? That's why their colors is the blue and gold. And they want a blue wave here at these midterms, but I think they're just going to get a blue ripple because most Americans with common sense are getting tired of these vicious attacks from the left that are unfounded and in the end turn out to be all lies. It's like the Russian ruse against your president. It's like Hillary Clinton pointing the finger at people when her own husband and Harvey Weinstein, her good friend who funded many of her campaigns, the biggest woman abusers of all, and you never heard her say a word against them. So this is all hypocrisy. Everybody with any kind of common sense knows it. This is all politically based. Let's get back to Margaret here. Margaret Christine Blasey Ford. By the way, I want to talk about the anonymous bloggers who downloaded copies of her yearbooks and just posted key pages that describe the social life of Chrissy. Little Chrissy Blasey Ford and her social set of party girls like the binge drink that boasted of binge drinking to the point where they'd pass out and couldn't remember anything. And of course, before that, preying on underclassmen, freshmen, and sophomore boys, the innocent ones that they could take advantage of, they said. I mean, these are the same kind of people that hired male strippers to celebrate their graduations, guys walking around in gold G-strings. This is your little purity girl, Chrissy Blasey Ford's true background. Why, she's a hypocrite, she's a Pharisee, she's a shimmy-eye throwing dust. Someone with a kingly anointing, called of God, made before the foundation of the world to be a U.S. Supreme Court Justice at this time in our history in order to preserve our republic, our Constitution, and our balance of powers. I'm telling you, this is a direct attack of the globalist Luciferians from hell on a good man, and it's being brought to pass by a person with no integrity who at this time in her life, when she goes back to the 83 to 85 years, she's a filthy little girl, and I tell you right now, she's trying to cover that up. Now, we can really get a look at her social set here. The yearbook title is called Scribe. Scribe, okay? Let's see what they wrote, these scribes, these little wicked girls that wrote and put their entries in. The relevant issues are Scribe 82, Scribe 83, and Scribe 84, corresponding to Blasey's sophomore, junior, and senior years when she and her classmates and Kavanaugh were between the ages of 15 and 17-year-old, all juveniles. Like juveniles don't act crazy sometimes in high school, especially when they're not from very strong Christian or moral homes, such as the case as Blasey Ford. And we find out that Justice Kavanaugh had some good moral underpinnings and was a very polite man, and the two girls that dated him in high school have already come out and said that. He was a man of courtesy, of manners. He didn't intrude on them in any way. This is totally against his character. Of course it is. This is all made up. But I'm trying to show you the subject that's coming to the Senate, this creep, this salamander that crawled out from under a rock, these false allegations that she never brought up the whole time he was a circuit court judge or any other hearings regarding his judgeships. Truth be told, her own husband didn't even hear the name Kavanaugh when she brought up the fact that she was nearly raped when she was a high school girl in prep school, and it just destroyed her. Now, many of the names and pages to protect the reputations of the people who are now adults in their late 40s, early 50s, even though they're heavily redacted, what emerges from these descriptions is a social scene of faculty and parents which approved racist comments. I mean, they mocked blacks, they mocked Muslims, they mocked Jews, and there's a promiscuity we see with multiple photos and references to binge drinking and the accompanying joy of not being able to remember any of it. Now you're getting the picture here. No wonder she tried to scrub all this from the records. No wonder her school tried to pull all those yearbooks so no one could see copies of them. Too bad. There was too much vile seed already planted in the ground. Now those rotten trees are bringing forth corrupt fruit, and these vile yearbooks are showing up everywhere. Well, thank you to those anonymous uploaders. Well, we get this anonymous author of this new cult of the First Amendment. It was a blog, and it noted that Chrissy Blasey alleges she cannot recall the exact date, place, or names of people who were at the party in question. I mean, what is this? This woman can't even name the date, the time, the place, or the names of the people who were at this party in question that supposedly Justice Kavanaugh was at. That's because he wasn't there. Or if he was there, he acted like a gentleman like he always acted, and his friends verified that. That Blasey Ford cannot remember the key details of the alleged assault will surprise nobody who reads this celebratory paragraph of the 1984 Holton Arms Yearbook. Again, this is her quote. Lastly, one cannot fail to mention the climax of the junior social scene, the party, striving to extend our John Belushi educational experience beyond the confines of the classroom. We played such intellectually stimulating games as quarters, Mexican dice, and everyone's favorite, pass out, which usually resulted from the aforementioned two. I mean, come on. These are obviously racial slurs, and pass out was those girls getting so drunk, playing quarters and Mexican dice. I mean, these girls were way past spin the bottle. It wasn't just about a little peck on the kiss with these girls. She and her friends were trying to seduce underclassmen boys, freshmen and sophomores. Why, those little idiots, those boys just out of puberty, they don't know anything. Let's take advantage of them. Let me just put it this way. These aren't little innocent schoolgirls at a prep school, reading their Bibles every morning, doing their devotions. These girls had wisdom of evil beyond their years. And they have these occultic Halloween parties. And they're pictured here. You can see some of the pictures. I mean, some of these occultic parties they had where they dressed up and act all strange and drunk. These took place 16 weeks ahead of the alleged assault, which Blasey claims happened in the summer of '82 after her sophomore year. Well, again, it was a sophomore girls they taught to binge drink and to prey upon the 1 or 2 year younger boys. Now, 10th grade seemed to have been a ritual initiation into the Holton party scene. That's right, the Holton Arms School party scene. That was the epitome of being cool at that time in 1983 to 1985. Another sophomore girl threw multiple all-night benders, the highlight of which featured a male erotic dancer in a gold G-string, for goodness sakes. I mean, give me a break here. You're not going to be looking at any sincere woman here when you see her testify before the Senate. You should know this woman's background and how she's tried to purge it. Unfortunately, for her sake, the truth is coming out. Well, she started it. And now inspo News is going to finish it with this report. Now in this cult of the First Amendment, we see, preparing the report, that she came across a biased viral article from Heavy.com that portrays Christine Blasey and Holton Arms as the very essence of high school purity. Well, that's disinformation. That was made up. Let me go on. As for the school itself, when Blasey attended it, nothing could be further from the truth. In 1982 was a particularly wild year for the girls of Holton Arms. Noted as the cult of the First Amendment, and Scribe 82 published multiple pictures of minors, and this is underage drinking, minors drinking heavily, beer cans stacked up ceiling high, liquor repeatedly glorified, boys, beer, and the zoo atmosphere was like their goal. These girls, like Blasey Ford, lived for this. And I wonder how many of them were really virgins when they ended up graduating from that place. But the author of The Cult of the First Amendment says seeing such an insensitive racism in action at this prestigious girls' academy, attended by mostly white, rich girls of questionable moral character, it provides the context of the very privileged attitude exhibited by the Holton Arms all-female student body. Of course, they love bragging on taking down the boys. The other prep schools like Georgetown, the other prep schools like what Judge Brett Kavanaugh attended, they love taking those boys down. And that's just how they said it in the yearbook. Now, folks, this is a tri-delt sorority before tri-delt sorority. The fact is, now that these yearbooks are being released right before her Senate hearing, you can see these yearbooks were paid for by the parents of these kids. I mean, what kind of parents are these? They certainly weren't Sunday school teachers. I mean, they're paying for these assorted yearbooks, and they were approved by this left-wing, crazy liberal faculty, paid for by parents. It just shows you how powerful they were in their own right at such a young age. How the kids could manipulate the parents and say, let us put all this folderol in these yearbooks and have our fun. Let us have our jollies. And if a little guy like Justice Brett Kavanaugh gets involved with it 36 years later to keep him off the Supreme Court of the United States, that would protect the presidency of the United States, that would protect the Make America Great Again movement, the national sovereignty of the United States, and George Soros can use me to help do that, well, so be it. Let's bring it out, and let's go ahead and accuse this guy falsely and bring him down. But all this certainly defies the image that Christine Blasey Ford and her handlers, her attorneys, George Soros people, are portraying her as some kind of helpless victim without the mental fortitude to call her alleged attackers to account before her parents or other authority figures. You notice she never complained about this until just now, just the last few weeks. Oh, sure, she'll say, I had this terrible, horrible event when I was 15, and now it was Justice Kavanaugh, okay, this is all recent. This is all neatly spun. She doesn't know it was him. She can't even say it was him. She doesn't know where and when it took place. That's because this kid was drunk all the time with her girlfriends. Now we find, after reading these yearbooks and talking to many of the parents and former students of this school, that the faculty and the parents approved not only of binge drinking, but they were licentious enough to say sexual promiscuity was good, let them sow their wild oats, all this kind of mess. On a final note, this girl and her friends, in The Cult of the First Amendment, it mentions in detail And even in the yearbook, the girls mention of their male conquest with great pride. They took pride in taking down men and making them not virgins any longer. Let's take the Beach Week that they celebrated. It was a drunken frenzy. Beach Week culminated the year for those of us lucky to go with school and on our minds in temporary recess. We were able to release all those troubling inhibitions of the past year while dancing in the middle of a coastal highway. Anne and I and friends picked up some men who passed out in their apartment. Yeah, they get these boys drunk and they would take advantage of them at times. And of course, trolling the Georgetown and suburban Washington night spots, discovering that good things come in pairs. Okay, so Christine Blasey Ford, Margaret, and her friends are not just a bunch of innocent little schoolgirls who were taken advantage by a 17-year-old guy aspiring to be an attorney one day. I reiterate, in the final passage of the cult of the First Amendment, it's this: the joy of passing out and forgetting everything that you did the night before was our goal. It is to be praised. Let me quote it again. And there were always parties to celebrate any occasion. Although these parties are no doubt unforgettable, they are only a memory lapse for most, since loss of consciousness is often an integral part of our party scene. Now, if truly a sexual assault took place as alleged by Dr. Blasey Ford, does that justify it? Of course not. We're not justifying sexual assault under any circumstance, even with a promiscuous girl. No young lady or middle-aged lady or old lady, it doesn't matter, any lady should be taken advantage by a male counterpart in any situation where they are not willfully asking for a romance. We're not justifying anything here, but we're certainly not going to justify lies. We're not going to justify someone who's making up stuff to try to hurt and besmirch, smear the reputation of a great potential Supreme Court justice, and I believe he'll be confirmed. But I did this report for one reason. We're not justifying any kind of sexual assault of this promiscuous young lady. What we are saying is this: when you take her and her allegations and put them in the proper context in history, when it happened, all that was going on around it, the things that were written, the things that were said, the things that were boasted of, in the context of the allegations of a privileged and perhaps troubled, mixed up young woman whose relationship with alcohol cast a great shadow of doubt on her memory and her claims of powerlessness, like she was the unwitting participant in any of this. This girl was a party girl. She was a sex addict. She enjoyed drinking, and they boasted of their exploits. And even if it all was bravado and they really didn't do any of these things they said they did, the context is still someone who's not innocent and pure and not expecting any of this to come down, i.e. getting drunk and trying to be with boys. Okay? She tried to be with boys. She tried to seduce boys, her and her friends. That is clear from the history and from the yearbook and from the entries of this yearbook. But it was interesting that on Monday, September 17th, 2018, Christine Blasey Ford's high school yearbook suddenly disappeared from the internet. But a counterpart, a classmate of hers, read them days before and knew they would be scrubbed and saved them and then uploaded them. Well, thank you, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous. There is a reason they were scrubbed, because if the roles were reversed and Christine Blasey Ford had been nominated for the Supreme Court by President Trump, the headline by the resistance would be this: Christine Blasey Ford and the drunken white privileged racist playgirls of the Holton Arms School should not be confirmed. That would be an accurate headline. That's why the yearbooks were scrubbed. They're a testament to the incredible power these girls had over their teachers, their parents, and the boys at Georgetown Prep, where Judge Brett Kavanaugh attended. You had Landon Prep and other schools in the area, and they bragged about taking all those boys down. So I hope that you've seen in this report, consider the source. Consider the source when you hear her speaking at this Senate hearing. I hope the senators who are going to be present at that hearing hear my report and look into these documents and look at these pictures and these entries into her yearbook and really question her on this, because she has no credibility, folks. This woman's a liar. She's a hypocrite. She's a finger pointer for the left wing, for George Soros, She is a stooge to disrupt and to agitate and to prevent President Trump from getting a solid conservative Supreme Court pick on that SCOTUS. I mean, all that we're saying in this report is relevant to the national investigation now being conducted in the media, in our homes, in the halls of Congress. And I mean, this is a sad discussion. America shouldn't be having this discussion. This man should be joyfully getting his nomination vote already this past week and moving on to the Supreme Court for the October new session. But boy, the left wants Brett Kavanaugh's yearbooks be fair game, so why shouldn't her yearbook not be fair game? Again, these leftists always have a double standard. There's always a two-tier system of justice with them. We see this with this Russian probe, how Hillary was exonerated and how they're trying to frame Donald Trump as the Department of Justice. This is all left-wing globalist mentalities. It's all about acquiring power. It isn't about the good of this country or its citizens. It's about them on the left, their political ambitions to aspire to obtain power to themselves. And we know that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The maxim of Lord Acton stands. Now, this woman, she's jealous, or she's got some mission involved, or she's been paid off. But the left wing is using her like a cultic doll to stick pins into the heart and soul of this good judge, Brett Kavanaugh, and his family, because she's involved his family at this point. So Scribe 84, remember that. That was the yearbook for her senior year. Her name was Christine Blasey. In high school, she was referred to as Chrissy or Margaret. In the images on this report, you've seen how she's pictured at her occultic Halloween parties in her junior year. And listen, again, here's the caption. Lastly, one cannot fail to mention the climax of the junior year social scene, the party. Striving to extend our educational experience beyond the confines of the classroom, we played such intellectually stimulating game as quarters, Mexican dice, and everyone's favorite pass out, which usually resulted from the aforementioned two. I mean, this is an immoral place. This isn't any Christian school or environment for the teaching of pious living. I mean, in the 1982 Scribe yearbook, it's liquor, boys, beer, and the zoo atmosphere is what was exalted there. They mocked the young kids that didn't want to drink. The caption on the right side of the image on these yearbooks mocks the faculty and parents saying, "Come on, you're really too young to drink?" Numerous passages in the yearbook discuss the drunken keg parties held while the parents were away from home. Again, they boasted on it. Well, enough of all this debauchery and depravity. I don't like the subject matter myself. It's not very edifying. And for all of you listening, I apologize if any of this has offended you. But the fact is, we have a Supreme Court judge nominee of par excellence under attack by the specious and spurious arguments of a woman who has a terrible context in the past from which this was supposed to have taken place, and she can't even remember where it was, when, the time, or who. So this whole thing is obviously being propagated by the left wing. It's a stall tactic. It's an attempt to derail this great Supreme Court nominee. And listen, he needs our prayers this week. We need to stand for truth this week. We need to call our senators and tell them to vote to confirm Judge Brett Kavanaugh as the next Supreme Court Justice of the United States of America. Believe me, this besieged president, whose presidency is under attack by left-wing globalist traitors, needs all the support he can possibly get in the event that Bob Mueller tries to subpoena him. Bob Mueller knows that. They are desperate to keep this man off the court. This man is sent from God to help this president at this time in American history to keep America as a chosen nation, predestined by God to protect freedom and liberty on this planet, to be a champion for those who seek truth and justice and liberty all over the globe. We are that light on the hill. There's no other nation like us. America is the greatest nation that God put ever on this planet, and we have done more to help other nations doing missionary works, doing humanitarian aids. Now, the neocons, of course, ruined this when they destabilized the Middle East and destroyed all those capitals and got all those Christians killed. And we pointed out, both Republican and Democrat, who those people are. They are globalists, and they're dangerous, and they're still in the West Wing trying to influence your president. They want to start a war right now with a fake false flag in North Syria, Idlib, We got to pray that stuff doesn't continue, because we are not about nation building here, destabilizing sovereign nations and trying to really attack a nation like Russia that's truly a Christian nation at this point and wants to have friendship with our nation. This is all foolishness, but being friends with Russia doesn't fit their agenda, because they need their war machine well-oiled and funded, the military-industrial complex, and they don't have it in their blood, in their genes, to want peace with other nations like Russia, especially Christian nations, because many of the people in this country that run our government are not Christians. They have no sense of right or wrong. They are in the dark when it comes to making the right decisions. So we need to pray for God's wisdom to continue to be upon this great president, for him not to feel lonely in the West Wing, but that God would give him men and women of morality, of faith, of courage, who will come alongside and like a paraclete help him. Like Aaron and Hur of old lift up the arms of Moses during this battle, so he can hold the staff of the authority that God's given him to lead this country through the troubled Red Sea of tyranny and globalism, which is attacking its very core and essence. And Christine Blasey Ford, in her sordid past, and when she was in high school or prep school, we're seeing how these chickens have now come home to roost upon her. We did not want to do this report, but I believe that every senator and everybody involved up there on the Hill needs to hear it, because without it, they're not going to really understand where this woman's coming from and the context in which she's accusing this great man, Brett Kavanaugh, of something that supposedly happened over 36 years ago. We're not standing for it. This man will be confirmed, and we're here to reestablish Veritas in this whole nomination process and to vindicate his good name. Well, God bless all of you. God bless America. And God bless the 45th President of the United States and his new Supreme Court nominee, who will soon be seated this October in the U.S. Supreme Court, Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And we pray for this woman who's falsely accused him, that she will come to know God and get some decency in her character before she meets him. And by that time, it will be too late. We pray for God's grace upon her life, that the Lord would heal this mixed up woman and bring her to her senses, even to the point where she might not even testify. We pray. God bless all of you. This is Federico Cardella with Inspo News, signing off.
How can we believe the word of a woman of something that happened 36 years ago when this guy has an impeccable reputation? There was nobody that has spoken ill will about him. Everyone that speaks about him, this guy's an altar boy, a scout. He's, because one woman made an allegation. Sorry, I don't buy it.
But in the grand scheme of things, my goodness, there was no intercourse. There was maybe a touch.
Right.
Can we really? 36 years later, she's still stuck on that? Had it happened?
I mean, we're talking about a 15-year-old girl, which I respect. I'm a woman, I respect. And we're talking about a 17-year-old boy in high school with testosterone running high. Tell me what boy hasn't done this in high school. Please, I would like to know.
Why would she come forward if this wasn't true? Because it has basically destroyed her family. She's had to move, she's gone undercover, she's gotten death threats. So if she's lying, why come forward?
She's also destroying his life, his wife's lives, his children's lives, his career. I mean, why didn't she come out sooner if she's telling the truth?
Why didn't she come out when he was going into the Bush White House? Why didn't she come out when he's been a federal judge for over a decade?
Why not have a thorough investigation instead of just the two of them, he said, she said?
Because it doesn't matter. It does not matter what everyone else has to say.
This is what happened, though, with Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill. The FBI investigated. It took 3 days. Done.
And we thank God for the insights He's given us into current events and the very deep currents that are moving them. We are working hard to bring you these good reports and to give you a balanced perspective as to what's really going on behind the scenes, what are really the undercurrents moving the surface currents that are often reported on the news. We're giving you really what's moving it all, and we need your support. We need your help. And we've been asking for the last 2 months for folks to give $1 to $100 a month, whatever they can afford. But we've not been hearing from you. So we do need to hear from you if you want us to stay on the air. We certainly want to. We think we have a call to do this right now, to be a voice for freedom, not just a voice for freedom against globalist tyranny and transnationalism, but to be an inspiration to all of you in your faith, in your country, and in your president. But it is getting more and more difficult to do these videos, and we would love for you to join us at Inspo News headquarters over at www.patreon.com/InspoNews. That's www.patreon.com/InspoNews. We need to hear from you today. Please, if you're listening to this report and you care about continuing to get these great productions we're doing, please lend us a helping hand so that we can do this full-time and actually expand, get a studio eventually, create more and more frequent video podcasts. It's very difficult to do. We have people that get on here and they want to hear more videos, but they're not even donating a cup of coffee that they buy at Starbucks each month, possibly. I mean, Starbucks is a globalist, anti-Trump. I mean, they sell Trump doormats. I mean, Starbucks is a pernicious globalist company, and all we're asking for is less than 1 cup of coffee a month to keep a voice of freedom on the air. If you really love this country, please consider supporting us at $3, $1, $9, $50, $100 a month, whatever you can afford. We appreciate it. God bless all of you. And if you can't afford to give, then the best thing you can do is give us your prayers. So visit us at www.patreon.com/InspoNews right now. Go on over there and give us a helping hand.